Welcome back everybody. On today's video, we're taking a look at the Eventide H9. I know how much you all love the way I say H, so try to count them throughout the video. It's a fun little game that goes along with the video, but we're here to talk about 5 of the H9 specific algorithms that I really like and that I really find inspiring on here. That, you know, if they were just standalone pedals, I'm sure people would be raving about them, but they're kind of buried in the H9 and they're kind of easy to forget about. So let's get straight into it. Before we get started, here is a sound with the H9 bypass. I'm using my 1977 Fender Stratocaster. Fairly straightforward stuff. Let's get the ball rolling with the Resonator algorithm. This gives you 4 individual comb filters that you can tune to musical pitches. Don't understand what that means? Don't worry, just play along and we'll get into it. I'm going to start with this clean delay factory preset. When I kick it in, I get this. That's just a sweet little delay right there. And I can actually just blend some reverb in on top of that. So if you don't want to use the resonator aspect of the Resonator algorithm, you do have a really lovely delay and reverb. Well, let's do this. Let's just dial in a little bit of this Resonator goodness. I'm going to bring note 1 down to be, let's make it A3, and I'll try and play in the key of A minor, and then I will set the next note to be E4. So we'll be a perfect 5th and an octave higher than that particular note. I was going to turn the resonance up to about 5, and I'll play an A note. And then you have this really subtle delay reverb with this kind of interesting, almost flanger style effect on the repeats from those comb filters. You could also dial in a couple of extra comb filters. What I would recommend with any of these algorithms is, if you kind of don't know what they are or what they should do, try the presets, because I believe the H9 factory presets were overhauled relatively recently and they're all really functional. For example, this filtered multi-tap preset sounds great. Which I really like. But let's move along to the next algorithm, which is going to be Sculpt. So we'll go algorithms, as we usually do. I'm going to come down to Sculpt. Sculpt is a kind of interesting multi-band distortion. So you can set the amount of distortion for the low frequencies, the amount of distortion for the high frequencies, and you can also set that crossover frequency in there. This is just the stock Sculpt preset, factory number 1. Which sounds really cool. What I would do is probably give it a little bit of a low boost post distortion. And then you can play around with the mix between the 2 bands. For example, I can crank up the low band at the expense of the high band. Or vice versa, and I can overdrive the high band while leaving the low band less driven. Which is super duper cool, and I like that low boost post distortion. I always think of something like a Messer Mark series where you would cut bass before the distortion and then boost it after distortion. And of course, you can set the crossover frequency. I'd probably go for somewhere around 800 Hertz with this. Wonderful stuff. There's also a compressor which you can place before or after distortion. I kind of like it pre-distortion for a bit of a boost. And there's an envelope filter. So let's crank up the envelope filter sensitivity, and you can place it like pre or post. I like it pre, so I'm going to turn that up. Check this out. Or place it after the distortion and you get those kind of classic studio style lo-fi sweeps happening in there. So that is Sculpt. Sculpt is a lot of fun. I like it because you don't see a lot of multi-band distortion getting around. Let's do a kind of another distortion algorithm in here. We're going to do Crush Station. And I really like this factory preset number 1 again, but what Crush Station does is it lets you basically dial in a big thick fuzz and add low octaves to it, and you can also make that fuzz kind of spluttery and disgusting with the sag and the grit controls. And it's only just dawned on me that Crustation is a pun. That's really funny. Again, you can change the mid frequency on this one. I like to pull some mid-range out and bring the mid frequency down. And then I like to play with the sag control just to make it a bit more of a character tone. And you have this sustain control, which can go pre or post distortion. I like a pre-distortion. That's epic. I can't believe this is a digital fuzz. This is awesome. Then we can add some low octaves, and one of my favorite combinations of things is a fuzz with the Electro Harmonics POG, and normally I know the POG can do a sub octave and an extra high octave as well. I just use a bit of low octave and a bit of high octave, so we can blend them in. I've got the low octave maxed out and the higher octave blended a little bit lower. We get this. With the sag and the grit cranked up, like I said, that is a glorious character tone. So we've done Ultra Tap, we've done Sculpt, we've done Crustation, which I only just realized was a pun. Let's move on to the pitch fuzz. That's exactly what I wanted right there. So what we're going to do with this one is, again, this is another kind of digital fuzz and pitch algorithm, but I'm going to use the micro pitch. So the default on this particular preset is to have the pitches, you've got a little bit of detune, 8 cents on one side, 8 cents on the other side, and we can blend those in. So I'll set the pitch amount to 2 in this particular preset. Then we can play around with the fuzz tone and the fuzz, as well as blending in some delay, which is kind of really cool. So let's just hear the fuzz, and I'll blend in those detuned voices. That's so ridiculous and over the top. I love that. Let's add a little bit of a delay in there, and then we can maybe add like an octave down or an octave up, something like this is almost like the Judas Priest turbo guitar sound in an algorithm, which is kind of cool. Let's just crank up 3 voices, and I'm going to add a low octave in there. Actually, why do a low octave? Let's do something a bit spicier. Let's do just a perfect 5th. Higher. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that delay and that micro pitch is pretty over the top, but that's part of the fun with a pedal like this. Let's finish off and take a look at Ultra Tap. I'm going to tempo sync all of this, so we'll set it to just 1 bar, and there's going to be 4 delay taps. So if I kind of turn all the fancy stuff off, like spread, I'll set in the middle, taper, I'll set in the middle, slurm, I'll set off, chops off, tones in the middle. Let's just have a listen to this. Chops off, chops. I also turned the pre-delay down there, but you can hear that that just gives you 4 extra delay taps, which is nothing too fancy. If we get this chop parameter in there, I'm going to set it to be a triangle, and I'll set the speed to be, because this is all tempo synced, let's do like a quarter note with the chop. That's kind of cool, but if I do it something a little more, say, polyrhythmic, it's like now instead of a delay, I've got this weird tremolo as my repeats, which I really like. If I crank the number of taps up, it's got this kind of glitchy reverb thing going on. I can set the spread and the taper, which is basically going to set essentially the distance between each delay repeat. So instead of all the delays being equally spaced, you can have them basically start out really long and get shorter, or do the opposite. So let's crank spread up to about 40, and the same for taper. It almost has this chaotic bouncy ball thing going on. Then we can turn slurm up, which is basically diffusion. That's super awesome. If I increase the number of taps, it's going to sound even more reverby. I really like that as a kind of special effect reverb on there with Ultra Tap. Alrighty, so there are 5 of the H9 specific algorithms that I would highly recommend you all go and check out. Just because they can do over the top crazy things doesn't mean you have to do that. For example, all of the distortion algorithms I think just sound great as standalone drive or fuzz pedals. Like I said earlier, the fact that you've got digital fuzz and it doesn't sound totally horrible is a really wonderful feature. And then you've got stuff like Ultra Tap in here, which can give you really cool rhythmic delays, or it can give you these kind of faux reverbs, which are personally what I like to use them for. You've got the chop function in there, which lets you kind of glitch stuff up or give you these kind of weird pseudo trem effects. What was the other algorithm that we looked at in there as well? Where are my notes? The Resonator. Really sweet thing to play around with there. If you've never played around with a Resonator, you can do everything from just a standard kind of clean delay and reverb to these kind of wild pseudo flange style effects. So I really like this Ultra Tap sound that we've got going on at the moment, so I'm going to play out on that. Thanks so much for watching the video. If there's any other H9 specific questions you have, let me know in the comments, or if you'd like to see a follow-up video, please let me know. As always, until next time.